All right. So it's amazing to be able to sit here with French Thompson Jr., French Thompson III, and French Thompson the fourth. 3 generations, and obviously French Thompson the fourth means it's a 4th French. I'm just excited to be here to share this moment. I want to thank all of y'all for coming and just hanging out with me and having this dialogue. I want to start with Dad, Pop French Jr. Talk to me about your relationship with your dad growing up and how that influenced you in your life.
Well, my father was a father, but he really wasn't a parent. Early on, about 11 or 12 years old, because of domestic violence, he had to go. So a major part of my life, especially my young life, was of being really kind of afraid of him and what he was doing to to the family. But after he left, and as I was growing up, I kind of learned what not to do as a father.
Did you have any other male figures or father figures that kind of showed you the ropes of manhood or things of that nature?
Yeah, I did. Some people would relate to television, what you see on television, but we did have other aunts, uncles around in the neighborhoods that I did watch. I did have one family, the Hale family, that was down the street from me, that seemed like to be the perfect family, with the father and the mother and the daughter and the son. And I kind of looked at what they were doing and saw a positive father and parenting figure.
Yeah, you smile when you start talking about the families on television. Was there like a family on television that you
had
thought?
Father's Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, and all that kind of guy come home from work with his tie on to wear it throughout the whole time. So, again, that's the other persuasion type of family, not necessarily what's in our community when it comes to the black family. Yeah. Not saying that you can't be like that,
right?
But the different cultures are definitely different.
Right. And so obviously, I mean, you made a shift, you made a change. Your life is totally different. You're sitting here with your son and your grandson. Mm-hmm. When you had your children, what was the thought? What was the desire in being a father?
Well, that was definitely a game changer in my life. Growing up as a teenager, then becoming a young adult in college, running the streets and thinking I'm all that. But when I got married, decided to get married and decided to have children, the Lord blessed me with a mindset to make a choice. And that choice was to try to be as much of a type of a father and a parent to my children. And I think that's really what it's all about, is that if you have a good relationship with the Lord and He is in your spirit to be able to lead you and guide you, then you can make the right choices that'll be everlasting.
Yeah. Not having your dad there and then having your relationship with the Lord, how much did you have to lean on God as a father and an influence as a father for your children?
Well, a lot. There's a lot of prayer there, because again, when you're in your young 20s and starting marriage and starting a family, you really don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, again, being involved with church, and you still have father figures that there, when you're still dealing with your own nucleus there, you have to make your own choices. One of the things that really stuck with me is when we were going through marriage counseling with my wife's father, which he's the one that married us. He said that you take the best from both households and make it into your own. Don't try to force upon your family what was in your family and what was in the wife's family. So we did that, and I think it worked out pretty well, because we were able to intentionally trying to do the parenting thing that we thought would be influential. One thing I will say is that I don't think I ever tried to talk to my sons on saying, this is what you should do to be a man, to be a correct boy, except for maybe when it came to talking about the sexual type of thing. You put the mother and the sister thing, how would you want your sister to be respected? But what I tried to do, and it came naturally, is to show by example. So Trey saw me in the church. He saw me working in the community. He saw me taking out the trash. He saw me helping out his mother. So I think that may have, and hopefully it had an influence on how he is today.
All right. Well, Trey obviously is French Thompson III. FT3 is what I call him. French, how did your relationship with your dad growing up influence the man that you are today?
Yeah, I would say the lead by example was a big piece there. Just seeing him, pretty much wherever it was needed, just kind of step up and say, okay, hey, this one needs to be done around the house. These are things that need to be done, even if may not be an expert at it, right? We're not a carpenter or mason or anything like that. But all right, let's let's build this fence, or let's build this flower pot, or let's build this shed. You know, those types of things are a part of it, and I think that impacts the way that I engage. I will say that I think it translates into kind of like my love language, and you know, which is, you know, acts of service as well as physical touch. That, you know, I saw a lot of just acts of service, you know, always doing as a way to do it. And so for me, kind of reflecting and saying, okay, let me try to show as much as possible that I'm here and engaged and stuff like that.
Good. Y'all have obviously a unique name, right? It's French. You may speak to the origin of the name, and then I want you to talk about like the desire to carry the name on, because I mean it's a huge thing to say, you know, it's a unique name. You can either be tired of it, or you can be proud of it, or you can just say, hey, look, we're just gonna keep it going because that's what we do. But I want you to talk a little bit about the origin of the name, where the name come from, as much as you know, and then French, I want you to talk about just the decision to say, hey, you know, this is why I chose to keep this name going in our family, and what I hope French 4 will take from me and then all the Frenches before him.
Well, again, I'm French Jr. My father is obviously the French the Senior. I never did find out from him directly how he got the name. However, one year we did travel down to Orlando, Texas, and we met his sister, the youngest sister, and she had pictures and some family history that I did not know. And we found out that my grandmother, Tina, which was my dad's mother, his original name was French Mon, M-O-N. And I think that what I can't think of the last name, I hope it gets taken. Clara said is that she got that name from, I guess, some kind of travels that she had made.
Okay.
What happened is that when my dad moved from Alabama up to Indianapolis, I guess they didn't recognize the whole name as French Mon, and then when they put him to the school system, it became just French. French F. Thompson, you know, and he was just not senior at that particular time.
Okay.
So the name, again, it's character building because it's usually a last name, not a first name. So of course, I went through all kinds of ridicule, not only just growing up. I can remember in 3rd grade, I had a teacher tell me my first name was not French. It had to be something else, you know. And so that gave me kind of resolve to say, yes, I am French Thompson, you know. And then, of course, as I said, my daddy didn't have a good reputation within the family, so that French name was a bad connotation when it came to, you know, our family. So I think I made an unconscious decision or choice to make that French name better than what it was for my father.
Wow,
and hopefully I've done that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's. I didn't necessarily have anything that I don't want to say traumatic, but that potent. But I will say that you grow into the name. I remember when I was young, French's age, or you know, a little bit older, especially elementary school. You know, you get everything: French fries, toast, bread, mustard. You know, do you speak French? I mean, everything. I've literally heard it all, right? And I would say probably around middle school was when I was like, man, this is actually a pretty unique name. Like, this is, you can do something with this name. And it carries a certain weight. And even now, as I meet people, especially I'm in a very political type of position, that people kind of nod like, hey man, that's pretty unique. That means something. And so for me, it's carrying that on and realizing because of the uniqueness, there's a certain responsibility that I would say with that name. Because I mean, no offense to anybody named Joe or Sam or Robert, right? But like it's a more of a common name, and so somebody be like, oh, do you know Robert? Yeah, I know a couple of Roberts, right? But French, like, well, people know who you are. People know the name. Therefore, there's a lot more at stake if you do well or do poorly, because they're gonna know who you are. There's no mistaking that who's French.
Yeah. What do you hope for Ivy to gain from the name, and then also from you, just as a man, and what you're passing on to him?
I want him to kind of realize the history of the name, right? You being the fourth, that there are multiple ahead of you, and to what my dad said, like building upon it, that always taking the name higher and higher. But you know, one of the things we talk about a lot with our daily affirmations. Do you know your daily affirmations? Are you gonna say them? Can you say them on camera?
I'm French. I'm a child of God. I'm smart. I'm brave. I'm a good people. I'm a good son to my mom and dad. I'm a Thompson. I do it all till well done.
Praise the
Lord.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
with that is, you start off, my name is French, right? I'm a child of God. That's the thing that he starts with. But realizing that, you know, our family goal, our family motto is to hear well done. And so as he takes that name on, as he does all those things, that he's feeling that he's carrying that on and understanding, hey, what I'm doing is to hear well done. So that's kind of what it is, and be it through example, be it through, you know, trying to communicate, trying to show, because we're flawed, right?
Yeah.
He sees me at my best and my worst, right? But he takes that and understands the foundation and then says, okay, I want to take this further.
You mentioned that about seeing. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he mentioned something about the name of responsibility.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, your name did mean something in the neighborhood. If in fact you did something good or bad, and usually it would come up when you said did something bad, you're that Thompson kid, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because they knew you in the neighborhood. And as I've grown and done things around the country, and Trey he's traveled around the country. He has met people and say, when they say French Thompson, you must be French Thompson's son. And then on the reciprocal side, as I travel in the church and in other things, I'll say my name is French Thompson. Do you have a son named French Thompson?
Right.
And they say it in such a positive way that now he's taken on the responsibility and said that you've done well doing that. So yeah, it is awesome because I think that's been lost as far as having respect for your family and for your name.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You mentioned he gets to see your flaws and your failures and things of that nature. All of us have grown up and we get to what I call Santa Claus ain't real moments with our parents. And we realize like they're not superheroes. They actually have issues and flaws. Talk to me about how you plan on dealing with that when he realizes and recognizes like, man, my dad's not perfect. Like, what is, I mean, because as a father, we always want our kids to see us that way.
Yeah.
And you can deal with how you dealt with it after. I want to hear what you say.
Yeah, I think my wife will probably explain that to him sooner than later. Right? But I think it's trying to instill in him that look at me as, you know, earthly father, as somewhat as a role model, but really, you know, acknowledging that your strength and everything, you know, developing that relationship with God, and that way you're not depending on me to be perfect, me to be flawless, right? Because then ultimately, you know, you idolatrize your own dad. So I think that's a part. I think what I would like to do is, you know, even at an earlier age than my dad did, nothing, you know, wrong. I think we started really having some real honest conversations around like 13, 14, especially in middle school. But, you know, we live in a different environment than what my dad and I grew up in, or when I grew up with my dad, right? And so I think a lot of the conversations that we had about manhood, about fatherhood, about what it means to be a black man were conversations that happened because of where we live, right? We grew up in DC, that you were just always around this. But I think it's gonna have to be much more intentional with him about it. You know, I have a friend that's a pastor, but also he's a rapper, and he has a song called "What It's Like to Be a Black Man." And so we were riding in the car, and then I had the song was playing on the phone, and he said, "What's a black man?" Right? You know, he's 5, right? So how do you kind of have that conversation? Oh, well, melanin and all those things, but growing up in DC, you saw it. Right? All sides of it. Here, it's not as that prevalent. So I think that's one of the things that's going to kick off the conversation more about manhood, fatherhood, who you are, what it means. Yeah.
Well, like you said, our relationship, when we started having really the father-son talks, was around the middle school time period. And as you said, our environment, I won't say force the issue upon us, but yes, I had to talk about him as far as how you deal with the other man and how you look at him, and the 10-2 if the police come up on you, and you know, the respect thing, and also like I said about the sexual thing on how you treat a woman and things of that sort. But it's also when it came to the talk about father, son, or just a parent and the children. There was a point in time where we had to say, we're not all that. We're not that perfect. You got to help us out at this point. Tell us what you're feeling. Tell us what's on your mind, and then we can kind of lead you and guide you, because at a particular point in your life, the decision is yours.
Right.
You know, and if you make the wrong decisions or the right decisions, it's going to take a long time to correct it if it's a wrong decision.
Right.
So we can lead you and guide you and just pray that you do right. And I think that kind of talk with a person, especially your children, helps them understand that, hey, yes, you don't know everything, but we got to work this out together.
Yeah.
It's a choice on the child, on the man, on the young adult to be able to say, okay, I can work this out with my parent, or they can look at it as a flaw and become resentful because I thought you were all that.
Yeah.
You know, God has been really blessing us where it hasn't happened with us. You know, we've had our moments, and and that happens with a father and son. Does it hurt? Yeah. You know, because you say, I've dedicated my life to this. You know, but it's also a growing thing.
Yeah.
And it had not been for the grace of God to help me through it, help my wife through it, and I'm quite sure even with Trey French III through it, then we wouldn't be where we are today.
That's good.
Yeah, I think I would say one interesting piece that I remember, we've always had kind of the point, and that's why in his affirmation he says, I am a Thompson, is that my parents tried at an early age, and we tried with our kids to get away from the comparison piece. Right, that's not what Thompsons do. That's what we say. French and Rebecca. If I remember, it's an inside joke for our family, but realize that you know, maybe we're abnormal. Everyone else is normal, right? We called ourselves AB normal, but so that you don't sit there and say, well, you know, the Johnsons down the streets or the Smiths down the street, this is what they do. It's like, hey, this is what we do, and then that helps to reduce some of the comparisons and trying to say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Be it from TV, be it from people that you know around and stuff like that.
Sitting at the table for dinner together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I mean, that was an unusual thing for his age group when they were coming up in middle school and high school. Some of his friends would call up and they said, what are you doing? Well, we're eating dinner. Where? With my parents. You eat with your parents? And we thought that was abnormal, but they were saying, no, we're the exception to the rule. Right. You know, and I would say, but they were okay with it.
Yeah.
Another thing with God's blessings with that, as well as having them as in the church. There's a lot of sons and daughters that resent that their parents had them in the church when they were young because they didn't have a choice. Well, they had a choice and they didn't.
Yeah.
To a certain point. But we had an environment in the church where they liked it. And they developed themselves and then became leaders. So I think that's a part of the manhood and the father-son and the parental relationship.
That's good. That's good. My dad used to say, "How do you spell your last name?" That was his way of saying, like, "Hey, we're Thompsons." He would say to us, "How do you spell your last name?" We would have to spell it like he wasn't rhetorical. Like he would say WHITE. Like
and we had to say it.
We had to say it. That was our thing. He make us say it. You know, it's like that's not what whites do. You got to be careful because got 3 little black dudes in a store. He's like, what do whites don't act like that? It's like, what is he teaching us? Anyways, inside joke for us. Just real quick, I know, you know, being a father myself, and when I had my children, my daughters, both of them, like the day I laid eyes on them, I loved them. And I want you to kind of describe like that beginning of the relationship with your son, like having him, and then describe the moment where you like looked at him and you were proud of him as a man, right? Because there's this moment of, I love my child, right? Our children can't do anything for us, and I think that's this beauty of like the love of God. Like we can't do anything for God, but He loves us with a love that can't even be described. That's how we love our children. But then there's this moment where like you became proud of him as a man. Can you describe that?
Oh, it was. There's 2 or 3 times, you know, when he was younger, and I saw just him doing things on his own, taking on the leadership responsibility and making it happen. You know, we had transferred from churches at one time when we first came to the DC area. We had St. Paul AME Church, and they took him under his ring, and he was doing the usher board, he was singing in the choir, he was doing all these kind of things. And we went to another church at Union Bethel, and he was going to take on some of the same responsibilities. But he had pride in what he had learned at St. Paul, and he said, "You all don't rush usher right." You know, so he was very young at that point. But
I think I've seen that guy before. I think I've seen that guy.
You know, this is the way you should do it. And he learned to compromise. But then later on, with going into making the choice on what school he had to, you know, because he's a very, very intelligent young man, and he had a choice of going to top schools, whether it would be the top, what is it?
What are you talking about? For college?
Ivy League schools, college.
Yeah, Ivy League.
It's some Ivy League schools, and then Morehouse. And we weighed the things and let him make his own choice, and he did. Very, very proud of him. Yeah. Especially after I went to Morehouse, not knowing what the culture was there, and saw how it was kind of a natural fit for him. Yeah. And then, of course, seeing him graduate. You talking about crying. He said, "Oh, God, Dad, don't be crying again on this one." But then even after that, when he went out on his own, and he's working with and traveling with BNSF, and he's working in his church in Kansas City. I went down one time to see him preach, and he said it wasn't a preach, but he was high into the Episcopal.
I heard that, right? French can preach.
No,
yes,
I spoke.
Program, but he did very, very well. But the pastor read his resume or his bio, and there was things in there that I didn't even know about his community work, about what he had done here and there, mentoring men. And you talking about another breakdown I didn't know, I'm very proud of my son type of thing. Yeah. But then again, he didn't have to tell me. You just learn these things over time. That's how God orchestrates stuff. Right. Very, very proud of him then, now, and then even in the future.
That's good. Hey, French, so for you, just looking back, sometimes as kids, we just don't really understand our parents. And now that you are a parent, kind of what are some of the things that you can look back on and like kind of see in your father and some of the things that he's done? And obviously, you're a long way from raising, your two children are still very young, but as you're growing into fatherhood, what are some of the things that you can look at and say, man, I'm really grateful for the dad I had?
One of the things that Catherine and I talk about all the time is exposure, right? Part of it was because where we live, but my mom and my dad were very focused on making sure that we had exposure to all types of things, be it traveling, the arts, entertainment, just small things of, hey, man, at 5 and 6, we were on airplanes and, taking trips by ourselves. We rode public transportation by ourselves. Like, hey, here's a bus token. Do you know how to get home? Right? And not like a, child abuse type deal, but it was, a lot of understanding how to be independent, how to think on your own, how to do those things. So I would say that's number one. I remember multiple times, especially when we were living in DC, that it was like, hey, all right, you all get out of school. This is elementary school. Get out of school, and then, hey, you need to take the bus over to dad's office or to mom's office, or hey, you need to get on the metro and do this and that. So that part, and not even when we started driving, like, hey, you can't drive if you don't know how to read a map, and literally plop you down anywhere in the city. And if you don't know how to get home, then you're not ready for that. And I think if you extrapolate that just to life's lessons, right? Yeah. Hey, these are the circumstances you're going to get yourself in. Do you know how to navigate?
That's good.
Right? These are the challenges that you have. Do you know how to function in those types of things? So I think that's a big one. The other one obviously is church, right? For those who have gone through one-on-one with me, you all know my story of dazed and confused time, but a lot of that is the foundational stuff that allowed for me to be successful where I am, taking a lot of those different experiences, etc. So I think those are the big things there, and I hope to be able to provide for them as they get older. Be like, hey, here's the experiences, here's how to navigate life, because the navigation is getting easier.
Right.
Absolutely.
The last question I want both of y'all to answer, and then we'll be done, is what would you say to somebody who questioned the importance of a father in a child's life? Like, what would be your sentiment, your statement to a person who questions, like, is it important to have a father in one's life. And y'all are speaking from a different perspective from growing up. So I would love to hear both of you.
You first?
Sure. Age before beauty.
Yeah, well, coming from a father and from a man's point of view, I would say it's essential. But we have seen cases where young males have been raised by their parent, by their mother, or by where the father's not been there and they've been successful.
Yes.
But there still has to be a manhood image in a young male's life for him to understand what it is to be about that. And it should be done on a positive, guiding type of thing, not a reactive type of thing. Because if it's reactive, then that person may not, the young person may not be as receptive. I'm trying to get you together now because you got in trouble.
Yeah.
Let's do it in a natural progression of life. Even if the father is not there, you put him in an environment where there's going to be a Boy Scouts or community center or Boys and Girls Club or some kind of church youth mentoring type of thing. You put them into that environment where there is some kind of image there. I think that's essential.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say you're going to be fathered by somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Be
That's
it
good.
be it the TV, be it your mom, your aunt, some male in the family, be it some person that you decided as be a role model. What the benefit of having a father, somebody that's there, is that it teaches you about presence and being there, right? I mean, there are times that maybe didn't necessarily like something my dad did, or frustrated, or talked to my sister like, oh my goodness, but there's something about somebody being there, right? And so for people that may not have a dad growing up, right? My dad spoke about the Hales, right? At least had somebody there that can be present and help to groom and talk with you about things. So that's, for me, even though I travel a lot, I try to be present. Even when I'm home, like, hey, even when I picked him up for today, it's like we get to spend time together. Like on the weekend, like, yeah, right? And so at least somewhere along the line that's sinking in.
Yeah.
And hope that, I think that's the big piece, is that you're going to be fathered by somebody. You might as well be your biological or someone that your parent desires you to be fathered by.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Apparently he wanted to hang out with you because he knew you had the phone. Right?
Well,
No, I think even before that, but that was good to hear.
Yeah.
That's good to hear because yes, that presence is a big deal. I don't know whether, French, when he came to visit our church and he did a workshop for us, and he said, if you know my parents, they had us in church 6-7 days a week, and it wasn't quite that much. But there was also times, you said yes it was, but there was also times where I told, because my wife and I had leadership roles in the church, so it worked out that we weren't far from the church, about less than 7 miles, so it was really good for us to be able to get down there. But there was times that I told my pastor, I need to be home. Even if it wasn't homework, even if it wasn't something that was going on, to Trey's point, just to be there just in case. In case. A chill out night day for me, but it was intentional to make sure I was there for my kids. And the pastor said, well, how do you do that? We said, well, you make it happen. Because with his ministry, that was a little bit lacking in his household a little bit. So we tried to make sure that, as you said, that presence was intentional. Whether you needed us or not, if you did, we were there.
Right.
Something like
that. So it was good. And I think we get excited about doing work for God and doing the work in the church, getting involved in the church. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes we forget the responsibility that God gave us. Like He gave us a ministry.
Yes.
And it was in our family.
Yes.
And sometimes we ignore that. And I think it's huge, especially as fathers, right? Because we don't want the church, I think, this is me personally, we can dialogue about this. I don't want the church to be a place where, like, I'm here and we talk about, church is good for talking about fathers need to get back in the homes, and such and such. And as soon as we find a good man, we take him out of the home ourselves. Like, we kind of remove them by putting them to work. Like, hey man, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Mm-hmm. Then the 5-6 days a week of church, which is, there's nothing wrong with serving. But man, when we take him out of the home, the kids are looking like, well, either the streets were going to take him or the Savior was going to take him. Either way, he's gone. You know what I mean? And I think we got to be careful to guard against that. And the presence, that presence piece is pretty powerful.
One of the things that I learned, and it might have been in my late 30s, and I'd heard it before, but it came to ring at home that as a man and as a leader, as a child of God in the home, you're the priest of your household.
That's right. That's right.
And to understand
Hear that, MOJ?
and to understand that kind of changed my whole perspective on what I was doing at church.
Yeah.
Not necessarily less,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
to put my priorities there. God, you know, my family, and then, you know, from there. And I think he was okay with that.
Yes.
He was okay with that. You know, even when I talked with my pastor about it, I said, I got to be there. Because they're going through some crucial times. From middle school, high school, getting off to college. After college, there was still a lot of stuff we had to do.
Right.
But, you know, and we're still parenting
Right.
in the 30s and 40s. But that priest of a household, and you understand what a priest does,
Yeah.
that's impactful.
Yeah.
That changed
That's
my
good.
life and my
That's good.
responsibilities. Am I great at it? No, but I try my best.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, I think that's all God is asking for us to do is to use the pattern that he set
Yeah.
and follow it. I just want to thank y'all, man. 2 great fathers, 2 great men of God, future father. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, it's going to have a
You
fun
gonna be a father one day? Oh.
Yeah.
You gonna name your son French? Oh, there's a pause there.
Undecided. Undecided.
You're pushing it.
I went to school with some dudes like that. Undecided. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to put me in the corner.
Well, thank
I'm
you,
undecided about that. Yeah.
All right.
Thank y'all, man. This has been great. And I pray that somebody's life is blessed just by seeing
Amen.
what it is that God has done in y'all.